It's time for Marvel in the 90s. And tonight we're talking about Wolverine, the Shiva Scenario. This was in Wolverine Volume 1, issue 48, 49, and 50. A lot of people will remember this run because of the die-cut cover of issue number 50. So I decided, why not revisit these three issues, written by Larry Hama, with artwork by Marc Silvestri, and see how they hold up. So in the first issue of the Shiva Scenario, which is also known as Dreams of Gore, Wolverine, in his brown costume, because that's what he was wearing in X-Men number 1, 2, and 3, he decides to go and hunt down some clues left behind, and he goes and checks out a Weapon X facility. He's joined by Jubilee. He notices that, yes, I have been there. There are his claw marks on the wall. He finds this car, this Lotus, that used to belong to him. He finds the keys in the ignition and he takes them. Now, this is the car that was used in Weapon X. In fact, this entire story is billed as a sequel to Weapon X by Barry Windsor Smith from Marvel Comics Presents. This came not too long after that, and they wanted to elaborate a little bit about the mystery of Wolverine's past. So while Wolverine is looking at this Weapon X facility, he starts having these flashbacks, these daydreams, in which he sees the director, the professor of Weapon X there, and he has all these flashbacks, including him as like a spy secret agent with Victor Creed, Sabretooth, as his partner. Also, Silver Fox shows up in these flashbacks that he's having in his mind as he's visiting this Weapon X facility. Now, Silver Fox, of course, was revealed to be a lover of Wolverine, killed by Sabretooth, revealed in the Weapon X series and in Wolverine number 10, which is a great issue. A lot of the stuff that Logan's dealing with in this is the mystery of his past and the idea that he used to be an animal, especially when he was under the Weapon X protocol, but he's trying to be human, and you can see that in these pages right here, as he's talking to Silver Fox, which this is a weird revelation that's coming up here. So he takes the keys and he leaves, but he doesn't realize that there's this thing behind him called O2 Shiva. Though he does find out that Shiva is something that will have the answers that he's looking for. This sends Wolverine on a quest into his mind in the second issue. He goes to Jean and he goes to Xavier, and they lead him through his mind. And they find out that his mind, most of his memories are in fact, could be possibly memory implants. So one thing that is established here, because we always knew that Wolverine's past was mysterious, but we didn't always know that it was mysterious to him. This cements the idea that his past is mysterious to him because he cannot even trust his own memories. So as he goes through his mind, he sees all these different scenarios again, including him and Sabretooth, in the 60s, 2 days after JFK gets assassinated. He's in Cuba, and Sabretooth makes all these references, like to the red herring that is Lee Harvey Oswald. So, Stokes, I'm sure you like that bit too. And then it all leads to the idea where he goes, I'm not an animal, and it's all leading Wolverine to remember that he was an animal. He was used, he was abused, he was controlled, right? And here he is ripping apart that brown and tan costume. And he leaves. Now, Jean warns him that it feels like he's reverting to an earlier version of himself. So then in issue number 50, which is the die-cut cover, I remember this page so meticulously because I've read this book so many times. Anybody that bought comic books in 1991 and 92, that's when these books came out, at the end of 91, beginning of 92. If you read comic books then, you read this issue. So Wolverine decides, based on information from Forge, he knows how to go and break into the helicarrier. So that's what Wolverine does. He breaks into the helicarrier. He comes up to Nick Fury. He says, I know that you got a file on me. You got a file on Weapon X. I got some information about Kennedy's assassination, me and Sabretooth in Cuba. You go ahead and call the CIA. Let me get my packet. So he does. But this flags something in the computer systems for a sect of Hydra. So you got this mysterious leader of this section of Hydra, very curious about Wolverine unlocking a 20-year-old. The last time it had been unlocked, I guess this file was 20 years before, and it's the file on Wolverine and Weapon X. So he finds out some information, including where the professor is right now. The professor and one of his former henchwomen are now working for the Department of Agriculture in the Pest Control Division. because they kind of get shunted around. He finds out definitively that the CIA was behind the Weapon X program, even though it was based in Canada. And at one point in the issue, it actually even alludes to the idea that Sabretooth and Wolverine are in fact not Canadian, but American. So he goes with the X-Men to another facility that he finds out about in this file. So when he gets to this facility, he goes off on his own, even though the X-Men are there. Sure, why not? And now he's back in his original costume, albeit a different 90s-fied version of this. Now, this was set to be a reversion almost of Wolverine back into this anti-social original idea of what he was with the X-Men. Over the course of the 80s, Chris Claremont's work had really made him become very friendly with the X-Men, especially with Jubilee and Shadowcat and other members of the X crew. This kind of brings him back to his original costume, albeit a different version of it with no whiskers, a cooler version of it with the shoulder pads. But this is something that was supposed to reveal some things about his past and kind of set him back as being this Wolverine. Now, I didn't quite notice the change because to me, Wolverine was always that way. But at the same time, I didn't read every single X-Men book in the 80s So Wolverine finds out some stuff. He winds up across all these movie sets. And a lot of his memories, these are the settings of his memories. So you find out that Weapon X has been implanting these false memories based on these movie sets. And to save money, they've actually been using the same sets for different people. So some people have the same memories, even though in a different way. So Wolverine's getting tired of all this. He's trying to find the mystery. Shiva's going to let him know what is up. But in fact, Shiva is actually just a program that's kind of like Brainiac. Shiva's not a robot, but Shiva is a robotic program, an AI, an artificial intelligence that can build and learn. So Shiva is, when they shut down Weapon X, they set up a failsafe that if anybody ever started trying to look into it, Shiva would be sent after him, and it would never stop. Shiva, the Destroyer. So Wolverine easily defeats Shiva at first, and then it reforms, and now it's learned, and now it's a tougher battle. Meanwhile, you find out that the hooded figure leader of this mysterious section of Hydra is actually Silver Fox. This is her very first non-flashback appearance in a comic book, is in the pages of these Wolverine issues. So she's involved. She confronts the professor. Wolverine fights real hard, eventually takes down Shiva. And when they find the professor has been killed. Silver Fox is gone. Wolverine doesn't come face to face with Shiva, or I should say with Silver Fox. He does with Shiva, obviously. But the professor has now clicked this button that sends the Shiva program to the next person. They find out that next person is Sabretooth. Wolverine says, couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Lights up a stogie and walks away. That's pretty much what happens here in these issues. All right, so here are my original issues right there. 48, great covers by Silvestri. 49, like I said, lots of promise about revelations about Wolverine's history. And this is the issue everybody had that we all freaking loved. Die cut, slash through, top secret file. This is representing the file that he gets from Nick Fury. Do they reveal anything about Wolverine's past? No. What they reveal, the whole purpose of this series, seems to be the idea that everything that was ever revealed about Wolverine's past, we now want to throw out as possibly being false. This is where we get the strong idea of memory implants in Wolverine. For most of us, this is how it always was. To be honest, aside from the patch stuff in the 80s, this was probably the first Wolverine book that I read, aside from those like first 10 issues or whatever. So the idea that Wolverine had memory blocks, false memory implants, that was introduced here. Larry Hama really does start leaning into this very heavily. Silver Fox comes back. It's a whole big mystery. But remember, Wolverine thought Silver Fox was a lover who Sabretooth had killed. And now all of that kind of gets thrown into who knows, right? Maybe you don't know if it actually happened. Altogether, I'll say this. It is billed as a sequel to Weapon X. It elaborates on some of that stuff, and it sets up some fun mystery that's going to plague Wolverine for literally a decade or more, right? But it was really intriguing. Now, the initial idea that Wolverine had a mysterious past, but it wasn't mysterious to him, just to us. I guess that's cool. But what's really cool, and I remember loving Wolverine because of this, is what is the mystery of his past? What memories are real? This sets all that up. Now, of course, a lot of it has been revealed now, and in the revelation, it's not quite as cool as we probably all initially thought of. When we thought of what the Wolverine origin was going to be, I still feel like I would love most of that to be a mystery, because I really like this era of Wolverine. Not knowing his past, not knowing how we fit together with Weapon X, Sabretooth, Silver Fox, all this stuff. And I think it's a fun time to revisit and remember that issue alone, number 50, one of the most legendary comic book covers, and I love it. On the back there, we got an ad for a Tiger X-Men game. And then on the back here, we got the ad for the NES game, which I've actually been playing through over the last few months, and I'm rather enjoying it. But I think it's a solid story. Not as good as the original Weapon X, but still fun, still worthy, and very monumental issues that are important to the lore and the mythos of Wolverine. And with some great artwork by Marc Silvestri. There are some moments in there, very heroic moments, where he pops out, especially in issue number 50, in which I think Mark did the entire issue. But altogether, I like it. It's not one of the best Wolverine stories out there, but it is one of the most memorable, very significant, and one of the coolest covers from Marvel in the 90s.